Part 1. England's Dream of a New World. In the fading light of the 16th century, England burned with a restless ambition. London's streets buzzed with whispers of a far-off continent, a new world where untamed lands promised riches beyond imagining, a place to surpass the empires of Spain and Portugal. It was 1587. Sir Walter Raleigh, a shrewd knight and favourite of Queen Elizabeth I, turned his gaze toward a remote corner of the Americas, Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now North Carolina. His plan was daring: establish a permanent colony, a beacon of English might in a wild and uncharted land. But crossing the Atlantic then was no mere voyage, it was a gamble with death itself. At Plymouth's docks, over 115 souls prepared for the unknown. Men, women, children, all pressed onto fragile ships, their faces a mixture of hope and dread. Farmers, craftsmen, dreamers, willing to leave behind everything familiar for a chance at a new life. Among them, John White, an artist and mapmaker, appointed governor of this audacious endeavour, walked the decks. With him, his daughter Eleanor Dare and her husband Ananias, expecting a child, symbols of the future they dared to imagine. As the ships slipped from shore, the horizon darkened, as though the sea held secrets no one could yet comprehend. The voyage was merciless. Storms tore at the masts, and below deck, the cramped spaces tested every ounce of endurance. Tales of lost ships, crews claimed by hunger or scurvy, were whispered in the night. Yet faith held firm. The maps promised Roanoke as a coastal paradise, rivers teeming with fish, forests rich with game. But maps concealed the truth. They did not warn of native tribes watching from the shadows, or of winters capable of crushing hope into despair. When at last the island emerged through the mist, relief washed over the weary travellers. Sand and pines stretched along the coast, murmuring possibilities. Stillness hung in the air, unnatural, as if the island itself held its breath. The colonists stepped onto the wet sand, boots sinking, and began to build. Rough wooden cabins rose, a makeshift fort took shape, a fragile dream slowly forming. None could foresee that this place would, within a few short years, become one of history's deepest mysteries. Under the scorching sun, as they raised the first cabins, something stirred in the forest. Not merely the watchful eyes of curious or cautious natives, but something else, something older. The island seemed to guard a secret it was not yet ready to reveal. The colonists laboured with fervour, unaware that they were inscribing the opening chapter of a new England. Yet the tide of fate, relentless and patient, had begun its work, drawing even the boldest plans into the unknown. Part 2. The Voyage to Roanoke, a perilous journey. The summer of 1587 dawned heavy with promise and peril. 3 fragile ships, their timbers creaking under the Atlantic's restless waves, slipped from Plymouth, carrying 115 souls whose hearts teetered between hope and dread. Salt-laden winds whipped the sails, and the ocean battered the wooden hulls, as if the very sea sought to test the courage of those aboard. On deck, John White, appointed governor, squinted at the horizon, maps damp and folded in weary hands. Beside him, his daughter Eleanor Dare, carrying new life within her, clutched her husband Ananias's arm, a bricklayer whose hands had shaped homes in England, but now faced the unknown. Children stared wide-eyed at the endless water, innocent of the burden of pioneering a distant world. The crossing was merciless. Storms rose without warning, swallowing the light of day beneath blackened clouds. Water seeped into the holds, drenching provisions meant to sustain life. Scurvy gnawed at gums and muscles, leaving bodies fragile and despairing. At night, the colonists huddled together, whispering stories of lost ships and ghostly apparitions, each tale making the timbers groan like the murmurs of some vengeful spirit. John White, sketchbook in hand, drew visions of the coast he hoped to see, yet even he felt the slow creep of doubt. What awaited them at Roanoke? Was it truly the paradise they sought, or a wilderness that would consume them? Weeks of torment passed, and at last the island emerged, a mirage of sand and twisted pines along the horizon. Relief washed over the weary travellers, but a peculiar silence accompanied their arrival. No birds sang. Only the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a chill that unsettled even the boldest. The colonists set foot on the wet sand, each boot imprint a quiet claim on a land that seemed both inviting and watchful. They stumbled upon remnants of an earlier English settlement, collapsed cabins, rusted tools, a stark reminder that this new world held dangers beyond the waves. Necessity pressed them onward. They had to build before the gentle summer gave way to a harsh fall. Encounters with the natives were fraught with caution. The CROATOAN, roaming the fringes of the forest, observed in silence figures half hidden among the trees. Some colonists, like the young carpenter Thomas, swore that shadows moved with unnatural speed in the night. John White negotiated carefully, trading trinkets for corn and fish, yet the eyes of the CROATOAN betrayed neither warmth nor malice, only a quiet vigilance. Whispers of prior attacks by less forgiving tribes lingered in the air, and each crack of a branch in the woods set hearts racing. As they raised the first houses, the oppressive heat and relentless swarms of mosquitoes wore on them. Eleanor Dare labored alongside the other women, weaving nets and preparing food, yet even her steadfast spirit felt the island's subtle menace. At night, the trees seemed to murmur, carrying voices the colonists could not place. Dreams became fraught with blurred figures, fleeting shadows, and whispers from nowhere. Unspoken, yet universally felt, the presence of Roanoke lingered, an unseen gaze, watching as they drove stakes into the soil, a land that held secrets not yet ready to reveal themselves. Part 3. Building the Colony. Hope amid the wilderness. The summer of 1587 draped Roanoke Island in a golden haze, yet beneath its beauty lingered a tension the colonists could not shake. Exhausted from their harrowing Atlantic crossing, the 115 souls faced a land both bountiful and unwelcoming. Silver dunes shimmered along the coast, gnarled pines creaked in the breeze, and the scent of salt and pine sap mingled with the sweat of laboring bodies. Under John White's vigilant eye, men swung axes, felling trees, women cooked over dwindling supplies, children ran between cabins, their laughter fragile against the island's hush. Each nail driven into the crude wood seemed to echo, disturbing a silence that did not welcome intruders. At the settlement's heart, a makeshift fort of palisades rose like a fragile promise. It offered little defense against the unknown, yet it became a beacon of hope. Eleanor Dare, her belly swollen with the life of her unborn child, moved among the women, rallying them to gather provisions, to nurture the fragile shoots of domesticity in the wild. Soon, her daughter Virginia would be born, the first English child in this new world, a symbol that life, however precarious, could take root. But even Eleanor, on nights heavy with heat and the cries of unseen creatures, felt the forest's gaze upon them, a weight pressing at the edges of her courage. Encounters with the natives were measured, cautious. The CROATOAN observed from the forest's edge, their eyes reflecting both curiosity and wariness. Some exchanges brought trade, glass beads for corn, iron tools for hides. Others left dread in their wake. George Howe was found lifeless beside a stream, arrows piercing his chest. Whispers raced through the fort. Had hostile tribes struck? Or had some misstep provoked the CROATOAN themselves? Fear threaded through the settlement, binding hearts with an invisible grip. Shadows lengthened into threats, and even the bravest hesitated at the forest's border. The environment offered no mercy. Mosquitoes swarmed, fevers claimed bodies, and provisions from England dwindled too quickly. Hunting proved treacherous. Deer vanished before hunters' eyes. Rivers ran with fish yet could not sate every mouth. Some, like the blacksmith William, muttered of curses, of an island that recoiled from human presence. John White chronicled every detail, his journal capturing both Roanoke's stark beauty and the unease that crept like fog through the fort. At night, the settlement quieted, broken only by the hoot of distant owls and the snap of unseen branches. Around small fires, colonists shared stories to ward off fear, yet even laughter seemed thin, fragile. Flickers of light danced between the trees, moving too swiftly for torches, too low for stars. None dared venture into the dark to follow them. Beneath the silvered moon, a question lingered. How far from England were they, and how close to the mysteries of a land that watched, patient and unyielding? The forest waited, and the colonists could only wonder what secrets lay just beyond the fort's fragile walls. Part 4. Struggles and Shadows. The colony's decline. By the fall of 1587, Roanoke's air had grown sharp and biting, the cold winds threading through twisted pines as if the island itself exhaled a warning. Within the fort, the colonists fought to keep hope alive, but the land offered no mercy. Supplies from England had dwindled to scraps of mouldy flour and dried fish. Hunting in the dense forest yielded little. Deer vanished into shadowed thickets. Traps returned empty. Hunger carved hollows in the faces of the 115 settlers, and with it crept a deeper spectre, fear. John White, governor and anchor of the colony, struggled to maintain order. His journals, once vibrant with sketches of plants and natives, now contained grim tallies, dwindling rations, names of the sick, accounts of disputes. The death of George Howe, pierced by arrows, remained an open wound in their minds. Some blamed the Algonquin, known from past encounters to hold hostility toward the English. Others suspected the CROATOAN, despite earlier trades. Tensions mounted, voices rose in the cramped palisades, and whispered questions haunted every shadow. "What if they attack at night?" asked Margaret, clutching her son with white-knuckled hands. Encounters with the natives grew scarce. The CROATOAN, who once offered corn and wary smiles, now appeared only in fleeting glimpses, their expressions unreadable. John White led expeditions to negotiate, yet his men returned with empty hands and uneasy tales. Fires were glimpsed in the distance, but upon approach only cold ashes remained. Strange chants, carried by the wind, unsettled the night. Paranoia took root. Colonists patrolled the fort's perimeter, muskets trembling in hands untrained for battle. The birth of Virginia Dare, daughter of Eleanor and Ananias, brought a flicker of light. Her cry echoed through the settlement, and for a moment smiles returned, fragile as autumn leaves. But even this miracle was shaded with dread. Winter loomed. Supplies were insufficient, and fevers claimed children while adults worked themselves to exhaustion, patching cabins that groaned beneath the rain. The blacksmith William, his sharp tongue fanning tales of curses, pointed to a gnarled tree near the fort. "It looks like a claw," he muttered, voice low. Eyes followed in silence. At night, the forest seemed alive with unseen movement. Steps halted just beyond the firelight, branches snapped without cause. Agnes, a young girl, claimed she saw a figure among the trees, tall and thin, its eyes glowing like embers. Adults hushed her, calling it a dream, but her words clung to the air. John White wrote in his journal a line he never spoke aloud. "Something in this island watches us, and I know not if it is man or nature." The colony teetered on the edge, its survival bound to a single desperate hope. One of them must return to England for aid. Part 5. John White's Departure, a Fragile Promise. Winter of 1587 wrapped Roanoke in a bone-deep chill, and the island seemed to press down on the colony with its unyielding cold. The fort, made of bare wooden cabins and a flimsy palisade, groaned under the Atlantic winds, while the 115 colonists, gaunt from hunger and fatigue, looked to John White with eyes full of desperation and unspoken pleas. Corn from the CROATOAN was gone, the rivers yielded nothing, and the shadow of George Howe's death haunted every corner. Each rustle in the woods made sentries' hands tighten on their muskets. In that fragile hour, White made a choice that would forever alter the colony's fate. He would return to England for supplies. It was a perilous decision. Leaving meant risking everything. Eleanor, his daughter, and newborn Virginia remained behind, alongside Ananias and the others who depended on him. Yet, with hunger gnawing at the colony's edges, there was no alternative. In the fort's smoky room, White laid out his plan. "I'll return with ships full of provisions," he promised, voice steady yet tense. The colonists nodded, though doubt darkened their eyes. What if he never came back? What if the island claimed them first? The day of departure dawned grey, clouds pressing low and heavy. Colonists gathered along the shore, watching White and a handful of sailors climb aboard the last seaworthy ship. Eleanor clutched her father, hands trembling. "Don't forget us," she whispered. White nodded, unable to meet her gaze. As the boat drifted away, the colonists shrank against the endless horizon. Silence enveloped them, broken only by Virginia's cry, a piercing echo of what had been left behind. White carried with him the colony's journals, sketches of the island, and promises of swift return. Yet unease shadowed his thoughts. Strange lights in the forest, whispers through the night, the sense of being watched. These things he could not explain. On his final night, Thomas, a colonist, had confided in him about a circle of stones in the woods, moss-covered and etched with unknown markings. "It's not from the natives," Thomas had muttered. White had dismissed it as superstition, yet the image lingered, haunting his voyage into the fog. The colony now stood alone, 115 souls facing a harsh winter in a land that seemed to reject them. Leadership fell to Ananias Dare and others, yet the unity that had held them together began to fray. Some whispered of seeking aid on CROATOAN Island, home to a tribe that had shown kindness. Others, gripped by fear, insisted on staying within the fort, convinced the forest hid threats beyond starvation. As White's ship disappeared into the mist, the wind carried an unearthly sound, half human, half something else, and the island seemed to close its jaws around the lonely settlement. Part 6. 3 Years of Silence, War and Isolation. After John White departed in the fall of 1587, Roanoke fell into a hollow quiet that pressed against the colony like a living weight. The ship that carried him to England disappeared over the horizon, leaving 115 souls to endure a winter that promised only cruelty. Across the Atlantic, White faced his own tempest. The Anglo-Spanish War erupted. Seas turned into battlefields, and England claimed every ship. The fate of a small, remote settlement was swallowed by the demands of empire. Time in Roanoke slowed to a harsh, relentless crawl. Leadership fell to Ananias Dare and a makeshift council, while the cabins groaned under early snows. Corn was exhausted, hunts became desperate, and weariness frayed nerves. Some, like the carpenter Thomas, pressed for a journey to CROATOAN Island, seeking aid from the friendly tribe. Others, haunted by rumors of attacks, remained glued to the fort, hoping White would return. Weeks blurred into months. The horizon stayed empty. The surrounding forest seemed to thicken, suffocating and watchful. Colonists whispered of strange sounds rising from the earth itself. Joan one night swore she saw flickering lights moving between the trees, torches that vanished when approached. Children, including Virginia Dare, were kept within the fort's palisade. Adults stood guard with spent muskets. Paranoia spread like wildfire. Some muttered of curses. Others believed the natives held knowledge beyond English comprehension. In England, White struggled against bureaucracy and the chaos of war. Ports were sealed, ships seized, and his petitions to Sir Walter Raleigh were ignored. Each day brought visions of Eleanor and Virginia, alone on a distant shore. His journals overflowed with sketches of the island, colonists' names, and fixation on strange markings, the circle of stones Thomas had described. Were they native symbols or something older, something the island jealously guarded? 3 years passed, a yawning chasm turning hope into a whisper. Roanoke's silence was absolute. No messages arrived, no relief came, only the wind roaring through the pines. If the colonists survived, they faced hunger, cold, and something more elusive, something that seemed to watch from the shadows. Had they fled to CROATOAN, fallen to hostile tribes, or had the island itself claimed them? Stand in that fort, hear the wind through the trees, and imagine the weight of waiting for rescue that never comes. What would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. Part 7. The Return, an Empty Island. By the summer of 1590, after 3 long, tormented years, John White finally glimpsed the coast of Roanoke. The ship, battered by storms and delayed at every turn, approached under a leaden sky. White's heart pounded as he scanned the shore from the deck, searching for any flicker of life, smoke curling from chimneys, the glow of a fire, the movement of human figures. But the island offered nothing but a silence that cut deep, unnatural, as if Roanoke itself had exhaled and held its breath. The sailors, seasoned and hardened by years at sea, exchanged uneasy glances. Something about this place was profoundly wrong. White was first ashore, boots crunching on shells in the oppressive quiet. The fort he had left, cabins and fragile palisade intact, stood lifeless. Doors hung loose, cabins draped in moss, tools abandoned and rusted. No bodies, no blood, no sign of struggle. It was as if the 115 colonists, including his daughter Eleanor and granddaughter Virginia, had simply vanished into thin air. White called their names, voice swallowed by the echo of the empty island. Then he saw it, carved deep into a palisade post, the word CROATOAN, stark and deliberate. Nearby, etched into a tree, the letters CROW stood unfinished, as if interrupted mid-stroke. A chill ran through him. The CROATOAN, allies on Hatteras Island, had once aided the colonists. Was this a sign they had relocated there, or a desperate message left under duress? The absence of certainty gnawed at him, heavier than any scene of bloodshed. The sailors searched the surroundings with no success. No graves, no recent fire pits, no footprints. The forest, dense and dark, seemed to swallow every trace. Edward, one sailor, pointed to a clearing where the grass was pressed into a perfect circle. No tracks, no broken branches, only the eerie impression of something heavy having rested there. White, recalling tales of lights and moving figures in the woods, felt a weight settle in his chest. His journals could not capture the suffocating presence of the place, as though the island itself were observing. That night, a storm broke over Roanoke, forcing White and his crew to abandon the search and return to the ship. As they sailed away, the island faded into the fog. CROATOAN, burning in his mind. A riddle, unbroken and unsolved. What had become of the colonists? Had they found refuge or been drawn into something beyond imagining? Roanoke held its secret, and silence was its only answer. Part 8. Historical Theories. Joining the CROATOAN on. The word CROATOAN, carved deep into a post on the abandoned Roanoke fort, was John White's sole clue in 1590. Those letters were more than a message. They were a fragile flicker of hope in a landscape of desolation. The CROATOAN, a tribe on Hatteras Island just miles south, had welcomed the colonists before White's departure. Could the 115 souls, men, women and children, including his daughter Eleanor and granddaughter Virginia, have sought refuge with them? This theory, one of the most plausible, lingers in historical debates, yet the truth remains veiled in shadow. Records of the time suggest the CROATOAN were allies to the English. White had traded goods for food. His journals detail peaceful encounters. The inscription seemed deliberate. Facing hunger, dwindling supplies and threats, the colonists might have abandoned their fort to join the tribe for survival. Hatteras offered safer waters and bountiful fishing, away from hostile tribes like the Algonquin. Yet questions persist. If they relocated, why leave so few traces? Why no definitive message? Archaeologists have combed Hatteras for clues. 20th century digs unearthed tantalizing hints. Fragments of English pottery mingled with native tools, copper trade rings, even a musket buried at a CROATOAN site. Lumbee oral traditions speak of ancestors with light eyes and beards suggesting European blood. Still, nothing confirms their arrival. Graves remain unmarked. Native records say nothing. The evidence forms a puzzle with missing pieces. Yet the idea of a peaceful integration carries doubts. Moving 115 people, including children and elders, across swampy land and treacherous waters was no small feat. Boats were scarce, skilled guidance minimal. Hostile tribes, unpredictable terrain, and dwindling provisions could have stopped them. Could CROATOAN have been not a sign of hope, but a desperate plea, carved under the shadow of an unseen threat? The forest of Roanoke, silent and watchful, seems to guard the answer. If the colonists reached Hatteras, they may have vanished into native life, shedding their English identity entirely. Yet lack of proof leaves a gnawing doubt. Did they find safety, or did the island claim them in secret? Picture standing in that fort, hunger gnawing, the forest whispering all around. Would you trust the CROATOAN and abandon everything, or cling to the fort, praying for a rescue that may never come? Share your thoughts in the comments. Part 9. Historical Theories 2. Massacre or Starvation. The word CROATOAN, carved into a post, remained the lone clue, a whisper across decades. While joining the CROATOAN offered a fragile hope, darker possibilities haunted the empty fort. When John White returned in 1590, there were no bodies, no blood, no signs of battle. Yet the silence of the island suggested the 115 colonists might have faced a grim fate, a hidden massacre, slow death by hunger, or desperate flight into the unknown. Sparse records and the brutal realities of the era deepen the mystery, leaving more questions than answers. One theory points to a massacre by hostile tribes. The Algonquin, feared for their ferocity, had clashed with earlier English settlers. George Howe's death, pierced by arrows, was a grim reminder of the dangers. Could a tribe have struck the fort at night, erasing all evidence and leaving CROATOAN as misdirection or warning? Yet no mass graves or human remains have been found. The marshy soil and tides could conceal evidence, but the fort's undisturbed state casts doubt on a full-scale attack. Another possibility is starvation. By 1587, supplies were low, crops had failed, and game was scarce. Inexperienced in the wilderness, colonists might have split into small groups, seeking food in the forest or elsewhere. Roanoke's swamps and rivers made survival perilous. Some may have attempted to sail north, but lacking proper vessels, the journey would be fatal. Droughts from 1587 to 1589 worsened conditions. Disease, cold, and exhaustion could have claimed them, their bodies swallowed silently by the land. Yet if starvation or illness ended their lives, why carve CROATOAN? Was it a signal, a final plea, or a marker for a rescue that never came? Each theory collides with the same void. No evidence. Roanoke left no graves, no shattered weapons, no journals to tell the story. The colonists vanished, leaving only an enigmatic word etched in wood. Were they struck down in silence, or did hunger claim them one by one? Imagine standing there, winter gnawing, forest alive around you. Would you flee into the unknown or wait for a miracle? Share your thoughts in the comments. Part 10. The Birth of the Myth, Supernatural Whispers. The 115 colonists of Roanoke vanished, leaving only the word CROATOAN as a mark upon history. When John White returned in 1590, the island's silence pressed on him, heavier than the absence of people. Rational explanations, joining the CROATOAN, massacre, starvation, offered fragments of reason, but the emptiness around them birthed a myth, one that stretched beyond fact into the realm of the inexplicable. The forest, dense and watchful, seemed alive, as if it had claimed the settlers for reasons no human mind could fathom. Natives told stories the English barely understood. The Secretans spoke of spirits in the woods, guardians older than memory, hostile to intruders. Before White's departure, colonists whispered of drifting lights among the trees, murmurs rising from the earth, stone circles that had appeared without warning. The English dismissed them as superstition, yet after the disappearance, these whispers gained weight. Roanoke, the tribe said, was alive, its swamps and pines holding secrets older than the settlers themselves. Could it be the island took them, rather than men? As decades passed, the myth deepened. In the 17th century, settlers recounted the lost colony by firelight. Some claimed the colonists merged with the forest, their souls trapped between worlds. Others suggested pacts with dark forces, a cost for trespassing sacred land. By the 19th century, explorers spoke of compasses spinning, shadows without source. Even today, locals avoid parts of Roanoke at dusk, the air heavy, as though watched. Modern conjecture layers the legend further. Hurricanes or floods might have claimed the colonists, leaving CROATOAN as a final plea. Others speak of portals, abductions, or time twisting across the island. Science offers dismissal, yet Roanoke's silence feeds the imagination. The incomplete TRO carved into a tree hints at a tale abruptly interrupted. What force could erase 115 souls without leaving a trace? The terror of Roanoke lies not in blood or bodies, but in the unknown. The stillness, the secrets, the unseen eyes all became a canvas for fear. Every rustle, every shadow seemed to speak a language no one could decode. The colonists, dreaming of a new world, may have stumbled upon something they were never meant to confront. And so the myth endures, because some places hold truths beyond our understanding, mysteries that refuse to be solved. Part 11. Cultural Legacy, Roanoke in Modern Imagination. The lost colony of Roanoke did not vanish from memory. Instead, it grew into a haunting echo that continues to reverberate through culture. The word CROATOAN, carved into a post in 1590, became more than a clue. It became a symbol of the unknown, a canvas for writers, filmmakers, and creators to project fears and fascination. From 19th century literature to modern media, Roanoke transcended its historical roots, establishing itself as a cornerstone of psychological horror and enduring mystery, captivating audiences with questions that remain unanswered. In the 19th century, America's expanding frontiers nurtured tales of the strange and unexplained. Roanoke seeped into literature, inspiring Edgar Allan Poe, master of the macabre, whose stories of vanishings and oppressive landscapes echo the island's silence. Later, H.P. Lovecraft, obsessed with cosmic dread, drew upon the idea of hidden, ancient forces in untamed lands, reflecting the notion that the colonists may have encountered something beyond comprehension, connected to the cryptic CROATOAN. The American wilderness became a metaphor for mystery, power, and fear. By the 20th century, Roanoke reached wider audiences. In 1937, the outdoor play The Lost Colony premiered in North Carolina, dramatizing the disappearance with tragedy and romance. Still performed today, it draws thousands, keeping the question alive: what became of the colonists? Television, too, explored the myth. American Horror Story Roanoke reimagined the colony with supernatural horror, portraying the settlers as victims of dark forces. Fiction or not, it captured the primal unease Roanoke evokes. Something on the island opposed the settlers' survival. Film and non-fiction continue to wrestle with the enigma. Documentaries such as The Lost Colony of Roanoke, New Evidence examine archaeological clues, while novels, podcasts, and video games reinterpret CROATOAN as a code for modern mysteries. The fascination persists because ambiguity reigns. No clear heroes, no definitive villains, only silence demanding interpretation. Roanoke embodies the tension between human ambition and the untamed unknown, between civilization and a wilderness that refuses to yield. The story's grip endures because it refuses closure. It mirrors our fears and curiosity, reminding us that some places harbor secrets we cannot unravel. Across tales, screens, and performances, Roanoke whispers still, as if the colonists linger within its depths. Its legacy lies not in answers, but in the questions it provokes. If you were to write the next chapter of Roanoke's story, what would you tell? Share your ideas in the comments. Part 12. Conclusion. The eternal silence of CROATOAN. The mystery of the Roanoke colony lingers like a whisper in the wind, an enigma that, after more than 4 centuries, refuses resolution. In 1590, when John White returned to the island, he carried the crushing weight of not finding his daughter Eleanor, his granddaughter Virginia, or the 115 colonists. He left behind more than empty cabins. He left a question that has haunted historians, archaeologists, and storytellers alike. What truly happened at Roanoke? The word CROATOAN, carved into a post, and the letters CRO etched on a tree, remain the only tangible traces of a people seemingly erased by the island itself. No bodies, no graves, only silence. Historical theories offer fragments of explanation. Perhaps the colonists joined the CROATOAN, blending into the tribe until their English identity vanished. Maybe hunger forced them to scatter, seeking survival in the wilds, or an attack claimed them, leaving no evidence behind. Archaeological finds, pottery shards, copper rings, are faint whispers of a story left incomplete. Then there are the myths. Tales of spirits, ancient forces, and an island that claims those who dare disturb it. Roanoke is not merely a location, it is a void, inviting imagination to fill the silence with shadows. Imagine standing in John White's place, returning to an island that should be alive with your family's voices, only to be met by the echo of your own cry. The forest, dense and watchful, seems to stare back. The letters CROATOAN confront you. Is it a sign of hope, a refuge, or a final scream carved under forces beyond comprehension? The island offers no answers. Its marshes, twisted pines, and relentless tides guard their secret, as if Roanoke itself decreed that the truth belongs to no one. This enduring mystery reminds us of the fragility of human ambition against the unknown. The colonists arrived with dreams of a new world, only to find a place that resisted them. Their story is not just a disappearance, it is a testament to the idea that some corners of the earth defy understanding, eluding our tools, our records, and our tales. Roanoke stands today in North Carolina, where the wind still whispers forgotten names. If you stood before that post under moonlight, reading CROATOAN, what would you do? Share your theories in the comments. And if this story has captured your imagination, support the channel with a like, subscription, or by sharing our content. It costs nothing and helps us continue exploring the unknown.